That was so moving, really. When I was right home to what our core purpose is and how we think about the intersections of the work. I'm so honored to have the opportunity and privilege of introducing Yvonne Abraham, who is described by her colleagues as a superstar. I was told to use that. And although I don't know you personally and have spoken to you, I feel as though every week, twice a week, when your column comes out, I am reading a personal letter from a friend. And your writing speaks truth to power to so many people. When we told Yvonne that we wanted to present her with this award, we asked her, as we asked Matt, who would you like to have to present the award to you? And she said, I would like a survivor to do that. And so today I'm also playing that role, which I don't speak about publicly very often. But I experienced sexual assault both as a child and as a young adult. And I was really lucky as a child that my mother believed me and created a safety place for me. And I think that a writer, in the way that Yvonne presents her stories and speaks to the breadth of survivors' experiences, makes it possible, not just for me, but for many, many, many survivors to feel that they can be public, that we can be open and honest, and that we are believed. And I appreciate that every day. Your writing speaks to the experiences of so many people who may not have a way to have their voices heard. You understand personally from your own life experience that you shared with me as well, growing up, as well as just your interactions with hundreds and hundreds of people, what it's like to live at the intersections. Because no one human being is a monolithic being. We all are impacted by so many parts of our lives, where we come from, our age, our culture, our race, our sexual gender identity, our sexual orientation, all of the things that combine to make us the unique people that we are. And with some grace, you're able to capture that. And it is really meaningful. Your columns speak truth to power. As we read them, we are called upon to strengthen our minds, deepen our analysis, stretch ourselves sometimes. You ask thought-provoking questions that frequently don't have an answer. And I'm also really delighted that we have the Boston Globe with us as a media sponsor of today's event, not only for what that symbolizes and for the partnerships that we have, but also because so many of your colleagues are here with you today. And so without further ado, I'm so pleased to honor Yvonne.
Debra, thank you so much. This is such a huge honor for me. I'm so overjoyed to be here, and I'm thrilled to get to put faces to the people I'm constantly calling and asking questions on deadline that have no answers. I'm so grateful, and I'm so grateful, Debra, to you for sharing your story, and so in awe of the amazing work Jane Doe does. And I'm especially honoured to be in the company of Matt, who, in addition to being a delightful human being, has done such groundbreaking work to make the healthcare system a refuge for victims of domestic and sexual violence.
Thank you.
When it comes to domestic violence, so many people are still inclined to ask the question, why didn't she leave? My question is always, how on earth could she get away? How can a woman who's being victimized by someone who is supposed to love her, someone who robs her of her resources, material and otherwise, who strips away her agency and her confidence, How does she overcome it all to escape her abuser, especially if she has children? I wonder this even though I've spent my whole life as a witness to and a beneficiary of one such escape. I often think about where my siblings and I would be today if our mother had not fled our abusive father. She was an immigrant from Lebanon, like him. When she was 17, her mother pushed her into marrying him, having convinced my mother she had no other options. Through almost 2 decades and 6 children, he beat her. At the end of every week, he demanded whatever money she made working in a factory job or a deli, because that, like my mother, belonged to him. I always had a bruise somewhere, she told me, always a black eye. At work, I had to lie and say, oh, I got up last night and I walked into a door. She lived in a time and in a culture where so many women were walking into those same doors. She stayed, they all stayed. But then in 1971, she couldn't stand it anymore. He was beating her older daughters now, preparing to force them into marriages just like hers. Even then I knew there had to be more to life than just being a slave, my mother said. I loved my kids more than life itself, and I saw they were going to end up the way I did. I was about 5 at the time. My older sister was 16. My younger brother and sister were just infants. But she got us out. Somehow, she summoned the strength to turn her back on a culture that told her it was her duty to stay, no matter what. She got out too because she was extraordinarily lucky. She had friends who swooped in to spirit us away when my father left for work one morning. Strangers gave her breaks on furniture and rent. Armies of angels protected us, from the nuns who refused to let my father take my sisters from school, to the lifelong friends who sustained us all. She was able to get away too because we lived in a place where the safety net was strong, with free healthcare and good, affordable schools and colleges. It was a place where blue-collar work paid a living wage, where a woman with a 5th grade education, working 2 or 3 jobs in bars and fast food joints, could make enough to feed and house and even entertain 6 children. That was 46 years ago. By now, we ought to live in a society where abuse is never tolerated, where those subjected to it have all the resources they need to be safe, all the social supports to be able to raise their children. We ought to live in a world where Jane Doe, pushing for laws to keep women safer, gathering up resources for those who escape, tallying the grim counts of those who don't, doesn't exist. But we don't. Amazingly, decades after my own mother managed to escape, we don't. The work continues, now with more urgency. Today, the uphill climb feels steeper than it has in a while. These are not, in case you haven't noticed, glory days for women in this country. And that means tough times for abuse victims too. Last November, 63 million of our fellow citizens voted for a man who denigrated women and spoke of them in crudely sexual terms, who boasted of his own sexually predatory behaviour. Did our fellow citizens approve of the way the man who became president treated women? Probably not. Maybe they were even offended by it, but not so offended that they couldn't live with it. For 63 million Americans, abusive and bullying behaviour towards women simply wasn't a deal breaker. Until it is a deal breaker, sexual and domestic violence will continue to plague us. It will plague us too, as long as we accept policies that seem designed to make victims' lives harder. If we cut access to family planning and healthcare services, if we continue to offer blue-collar workers wages that relegate them to poverty, if we slash Medicaid funds, we provide maternity and mental health services for poor women, if we shred the safety net and fund further windfalls for the richest Americans, we will be making it even harder for victims to flee and to make new lives. My mother is an amazing woman, a remarkable escape, the lives she gave her children, still feels miraculous to me. But we didn't do it alone. Nobody does it alone. The rest of us have to help, because protecting abuse victims should never be the stuff of miracles. Thank you. Thank you so much.